Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me tonight, and I hope you've all had a chance to enjoy the Highland Lassie.
Good evening, Deborah. It's good to see you.
Hi.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the show. It was so
So
fun.
beautiful.
Yeah, watching it brings back a lot of memories. Of course, this was actually the first show that we recorded this summer, and it's the last to premiere. Yeah, we were at Dunham Tavern, which Clevelanders will know is actually the oldest structure in the city of Cleveland. We were recording in the barn, and some of the B-roll shots at the end are from, and the interviews were recorded inside the old stagecoach house, which is from 1827. Um, and yeah, particularly for those of us who were in the original building, which is Elena and Dan, and probably the rest of you got a chance to look. What was your impression recording at Dunham and being in that environment?
I loved it. It was, yeah, it was just very romantic kind of atmosphere and perfect for the repertoire. And yeah, it was,
I loved all the wood and the open windows, and it was just such a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful day over and over. Just gorgeous days there. It's so comfortable to play, so
Yeah,
natural.
I loved getting to see the flowers through the windows
yeah,
in the video.
right.
I think in one evening we had some thunder or something in the background as well. We were kind of working around.
Yeah, there was. It was sort of amazing in the set that included the Lass of Petey's Mill and Red Red Rose and Love is the Cause of My Mourning. It was the very last thing that we recorded, and it's the darkest. I intentionally, put that, really, really intimate, dark stuff right in the center of the program. However, there was a major, major storm brewing, and I know in some of the footage. That I reviewed in drafts. There's you can see all this lightning in the windows, and there was howling winds at the end of the evening. It was pretty, and then of course the baseball game finished up, and there was fireworks that we had to try and avoid. So
Right.
it was quite exciting, and trying to find a venue that gave this sense of kind of his informality and a sort of bucolic setting, especially for this program, sort of inspired by the Scottish hillsides. It was a challenge, and I think that it was a nice. We felt really fortunate to be at Dunham Tavern and to occupy this historic space and to play this sort of historical music that's not so formal in a space like that.
It was wonderful to watch the show as well today and see all the pictures of flowers and remember that
Mm-hmm.
flowers are coming back. We just had all the snow in Ohio. So
Absolutely. Elena, the question on everyone's mind is what was written in that little book?
The words that I had to sing and some notes, some pitches. But I think, we didn't want a bunch of music stands
Mm-hmm.
there. And so, yeah, and it's such a good exercise to write out these texts, especially these long narrative texts. Or, there's no
Mm-hmm.
better way to really get to know the story than to write it out yourself. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you did such a beautiful job with those extended ballad tunes. If you get a chance to watch the pre-concert talk, it was really fun to delve into the history of Barbara Allen with Ross Duffin, who actually just published a new article tracing the history of Barbara Allen, possibly as far back to the end of the 16th century,
Wow.
which was very, very cool. And actually, I ended up doing a bit of homework. William and Margaret has a similarly long history, which was really interesting. A question here: did the style of playing or singing feel like a radical departure for you, and/or what was the experience like?
Well, I have to say, when I first got this music for this concert from you, Deborah, it was a bit of a surprise. I didn't know that this Scottish thing was even coming my way. Um, and so that my second question in my mind was, I wonder what kind of style she wants, because you can take this music so many different directions, and a group like Apollo's Fire does a completely different take on it than we did here. And you can either do the real folksy type of playing, or you could do a parlor type of presentation. So from what I knew in the past, I think it was Luke Conklin that gave a really nice lecture recital at Case Western Reserve University not too long ago about this very topic. And he discovered, even though he loves the folksy kind of way of playing this repertoire, that really it was played more like parlor music. So I think that's what we ended up with, and it was a fun experience to play this music in a different way.
Right. I remember, Julie, just to delve a little further, I understand that you did a program of similar repertoire recorded with Chatham Baroque a number of years ago, and I was wondering if and how that approach was different.
Yeah, it was totally different. We had Chris Norman come. This is
Right.
the Reel of Tolek CD from I don't know when in the past. But
Okay,
yeah, so Chris came, and he is just such a wonderful folk flute player from Canada. And he brought his style to us. And yeah, so it was much more along that folk tradition. And even earlier, I belonged to a Celtic group in Cleveland, Ohio, with Dermot Somerville and Ulalido. And that was kind of an international group that did modern versions of these folk tunes, as well as a traditional folk rendition of some of them. So yeah, I've had a whole lot of different experiences. So
Right.
I was just really happy to have this parlor type experience.
It is interesting also for the bass parts with these long ballads, because they're so simple, and all you're trying to just color the text, but you have the same thing repeating over and over again, often in the bass line. So for that, it was really fun to have two other continual players to kind of color everything. It was fun. It was a lot more improvisation than I usually get to do.
I know I had some of the same questions as Julie when we were starting this program, and a lot of the songs, not necessarily the same melodies, but a lot of the songs there are recordings available out in the world, and most of them take a much more folk kind of approach. And so I think I ended up, I don't know, trying to just listen to some like Gemignani to be like, okay, let's see if I can figure out how to put these things together. Yeah, but I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah. And I have to say, when you talk about like parlor versus folk, like, in trying to be true to one thing, if not, and true a bit to myself and what even the performing tradition that Leda Lisa's evolved in its own way, that was part of the choice to stay kind of focused in terms of the sources that I was using. So really trying to stay focused on sources between really at mid 18th century, as opposed to, randomly pulling songs from the 19th century or things like that. So trying to take a historical approach. I think that some of this kind of particular flavor and this kind of chronological and and even geographical specificity, I think, was lent a really wonderful character by being able to include the English guitar in particular as well. I think Dan might be a little frozen, so maybe then he's able to come back. Are any of you interested or eager to do more Scottish folk or parlor music after this experience? And would you want to take some of this work to another level or expand it in some way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was fun. And I've only ever dabbled, so it would be fun to spend even more time. And I have only like faked fiddling and faked sort of that style. So when we got this music and we're preparing for it, I called Julie and was like, what are we doing here? I don't know how to do this. So I like went over to her house and we were like, okay, we could do something like this and we could try this, and we kind of went through a bunch of the stuff to say like, okay, well, at least we're pre-prepared with what is possible. And then Deborah can tell us what she likes.
I also deeply, deeply appreciated everybody's openness to improvisation and really creating different textures, especially in the ballad songs, and really creating something that felt very driven by the ensemble as opposed to directed in that way. But there's masses and masses and masses of music, and it's partly because this sort of Scottish nationalism explodes in the mid 18th century, and the publishing industry sort of takes that challenge up. And the Songs of Scotland, what is this edition that you're showing us, Elena?
I somehow ended up with it. I think it was my grandmother's.
Okay.
And it's got some of the tunes that we did, and it's I don't know what publication date, but I've had it for several years, and I don't have like strong ties to any particular national heritage, but if I have ties to anything, it's I inherited a kilt from my grandmother as well. So I feel like, and I used to listen to some Celtic music growing up with my dad, and so this was such an incredible treat for me, and it feels more like mine than any
some other things,
than like the French medieval music stuff that I do.
That's cool. Since we've got you, Dan, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the English guitar. We have a comment up on the screen, comparing it perhaps to a mandolin. Obviously, it's related to a cittern. And I wonder if you could just sort of expand on that and what happens to the English guitar.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Since I've gotten disconnected a couple times. Yeah, it's a curious instrument that flourished full grown from Jupiter's brow of 1750 England, and then disappears in 60 years. Today it is related to the Portuguese fado guitar, but not in really any sort of contiguous manner. There's really no other instrument that has a tuning just like it, or a repertoire just like it. So it was pretty new to me. But for being having such a short life, it does have a very substantial repertoire. Substantial, however, in a very sort of salon
light
manner. Yeah.
Did you
Although
pick up
I have been exploring a little bit of Rudolf Strahler's music, who we heard the lute piece from him, Lass of Petey's Mill, but actually his English guitar stuff is a Baroque lute in the Schurming Drawn is kind of Tempest in a Teapot anyway, but this is like in a teacup. It's like so miniature, but so cute.
Interesting.
It's a lot of fun to keep in tune too. Yeah.
How did you wrap your head around 3 tuning systems in one program, especially the English guitar, or did you just cheat with tablature?
Tablature's not cheating.
If I had to play in more than 2 keys, my mind might have exploded. But that's why I had that capo. And that's what they did, I guess. And that's part of the tuning. When you have an open chordal tuning like that, you don't have many possibilities for far off keys. Normally, switching between tunings is not really an issue. I didn't have that sort of background and experience with English guitar, nor is there really any sort of
there's no tablature.
Most people don't do a lot of continuo with it. Yeah.
That's true too. But I remember seeing even the notated music is in treble clef. It's not tab, or unless I'm misunderstanding.
No, it is. It is all notated in treble clef. With Gemignani also includes a tablature, but a kind of tablature that no one reads. It's like modern guitar tablature, which is upside down and uses numbers and makes my head hurt.
Interesting. Well, it's a really beautiful sound, and I'm always interested. I think that we underestimate in the 20th or 21st century, or we have such a very specific idea what it means to accompany, or let alone accompany song. And this idea of accompanying in unison, I think, is a much more common 17th and 18th century thing. It was also common for wind players to accompany singing in unison as well, without any other harmonic support. Certainly in late 17th century France. So it's I find very, very interesting, and always interested in kind of expanding our notions of, of how music is made, and what it means.
The accompaniments reminded me a little bit of the early lieder, where you always heard the song, and then if you had the wherewithal, which on the piano you do, you could do arpeggiations or chords. So once again, a sort of miniature of what I see in pre-Schubert songs.
Interesting. Do you guys have favorite tunes or favorite moments from the show? And I would encourage our audience at home to cast their vote as well. If you're on YouTube, you can comment or ask questions in the chat.
I really loved La Caber, which was a Julie solo, and Julie played so beautifully. It's a gorgeous tune, and it was a beautiful arrangement and gorgeously played. So.
Thank you.
I really loved the tune that Deborah played after Red, Red Rose.
Love is the cause of my morning. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it makes me weep.
Yeah. Those two back to back were my favorite.
I certainly have lived with this music a ton over the last few months, and I find myself singing lots of it, but I absolutely love William and Margaret, and I think I think that your singing of it and pacing of it, Elena, is so beautiful and moving, and the variety of textures and colors that we got in the accompaniment, especially that low, the bare violin and cello at the end, really, creating these ghostly textures. Absolutely beautiful, and beautiful improvisations from both of you.
I remember when Julie first tried out that thing at the very end with the sort of whatever, when you play more than one note at a time on the violin.
Double stops.
And I was oh, thank you. I was so blown away by that. Just Julie's sense of dramatic arc and creating that moment, that was amazing.
Yeah, well, the first time I read it through, and Deborah, you had sketched out a couple of improv things that really brought out the text and what it was saying, and the more I played it, and the more I'm like, wow, oh yeah, this really colors that. And so at the death part, I thought, wow, how can I make it really deathly?
You nailed it.
I went low.
Low, open fifths. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. And how about for you, Rebecca? A favorite tune?
Oh, I like those two in the darkest moment in the middle.
Yeah.
And I was reminded how much I loved the Gemignani as I was listening through it again. It was so much fun to play. I think I was remembering all the fun that I had playing that piece. But.
The Gemignani was kind of a surprise to me because, I had the first violin part and I was playing the melody, and then all of a sudden, Allison plays the second violin and it's like,
And then randomly the cello has this moment in like the slow movement. It's very strange piece.
Yeah, that was my favorite part, was that da 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 da.
Operatic cadenza.
So strange, but really fun.
Tom McIver Burns wrote a poem, The Address to a Haggis. And there is a haggis recipe in a 1430s cookbook, for which he provides a link. And can you dig up some Scottish music that would fit any of these lyrics and perform it for us?
Encore next time.
Next time.
And then with a live
absolutely.
demonstration of the recipe.
Well, you say that. Elena did a beautiful French rendition of a recipe for mussel soup a couple of years ago, which you can find on YouTube, actually. But I think we've got to work up to haggis. You're absolutely right. We were having a whole haggis discussion before coming on this live Q&A and discussing among us who had haggis and who likes liver. And we have another question here, Elena, about how you approached pronunciation in these songs.
Well, I had a blast with it because of all those U vowels. Anytime you would have an U in English, I got to pronounce it with an U vowel, which is just a lot of fun. And I think I got maybe a little kind of chart from a friend who knows these things. And then the same friend put me in touch with this wonderful singer, Scottish singer, Steve Byrne, I think is how you pronounce his name. And he won like Scottish Folk Singer of the Year some number of years ago. And so we did a Zoom session, and which I recorded. So I got to play back his speaking through the text a million times. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's sort of, I was going around thinking in Scottish diction for a month, and now I can't remember how to pronounce anything, but it'll come back.
No, I think you did a great job. Absolutely. Good. So, what do you guys have coming up next, or what are you looking forward to? I know that it's a strangely quiet time for some of us with recent cancellations, but I hope there's some fun stuff on your horizons.
Well, yeah. Elena and I were not supposed to be available tonight because we were supposed to be in Brooklyn performing with our medieval group, but we had to cancel it. So instead, we're rehearsing this week and making some videos, which we're going to record tomorrow. So
Wonderful.
we've been busy.
Excellent.
Paul's Fire is supposed to do a recording project in a couple of weeks, but we'll see if that happens.
Yeah.
I have an Atlanta Baroque Orchestra concert coming up end of February. Fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm. Fingers are very tightly crossed for the end of February, where Elena and Allison and I, together with Scott Metcalf, Jason McStutes, and Kim Leeds, will mark Les Delices' return to live performances since the start of the pandemic. Really beautiful, exciting medieval program called Of Gods and Heroes, where we are actually also working with former Ohio Poet Laureate Dave Lucas, who will be writing a poem for us to introduce the concert and also narrating throughout. So that should be really cool. And of course, we are all involved in some fashion in The White Cat, which is a long-awaited dramatic kind of Baroque opera entertainment based on a 17th century French fairy tale by a female author, kind of modern feminist version of Puss in Boots. So I can't wait for that. And there's a lot of prep going into that at the moment, coming up in late March, early April. So I want to thank you all for joining me. I want to thank you for these beautiful performances in the Highland Lassie. I want to thank our audience for tuning in tonight for this special program on our premiere evening. And it is great to see you, and I can't wait to make music with all of you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Night.